You know what used to drive me crazy? I would plant the same tomato variety as my neighbor, same transplant size, same planting date, and his plants would be twice the size of mine by July. I could not figure it out. I was fertilizing. I was watering on schedule. I was doing everything the books told me to do. Then I visited an Amish family's garden in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I finally understood what I had been missing. Their plants were not just growing. They were thriving in a way I had never seen in a home garden. Thick stems, deep green leaves, heavy fruit set, and everything seemed about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of where my garden would be at the same point in the season. When I asked what fertilizer they used, the older gentleman just smiled and said they do not fertilize their plants. They feed their soil. That one sentence changed the entire direction of my gardening. Today I am going to walk you through exactly how the Amish build soil that makes everything grow faster. And I mean the specific methods you can start using in your own garden this season. Plus, stick around to the end because I will share a simple liquid technique they use that can jumpstart your soil biology almost immediately. It is one of the most underrated tools I have ever added to my routine. I will be honest with you, for about 20 years, I was a synthetic fertilizer gardener. Every spring, I would buy bags of 10-10-10, sprinkle it around my plants, and think I was giving them everything they needed. And it worked, sort of. My plants grew, I got harvests. But I was on a treadmill. Every year I needed the same inputs because my soil was not actually improving. It was just being propped up. When I started learning how Amish families approach soil fertility, it was not an overnight conversion. It was a slow realization that I had been feeding the wrong thing for decades. I was feeding plants. They were feeding soil. And that difference, once you understand it, changes everything about how you garden. In Amish communities, particularly in Lancaster County and Holmes County, Ohio, there is a principle called Gelassenheit. It means yielding to natural order, trusting slow, steady investment over quick fixes, letting things work the way they were designed instead of trying to shortcut the process. When it comes to soil, this principle is the foundation of everything the Amish do. They do not expect instant results from a bag of fertilizer. They invest organic matter into their soil year after year, generation after generation, trusting that the biology in the ground will do its job if they keep feeding it. And here is what modern soil science tells us. They are exactly right. In biologically active soil, a thriving community of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and earthworms breaks down organic matter and converts it into forms that plant roots can absorb immediately. This process, called nutrient cycling, happens dramatically, faster in living soil than in soil that has been depleted by years of synthetic inputs and neglect. Research from multiple agricultural universities has shown that plants grown in biologically active soil can access nutrients up to 10 times more efficiently than plants in conventionally managed soil. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between a tomato plant that struggles through June and one that is setting fruit by early July. The Amish did not need a lab to tell them this. They watched it happen in their gardens for generations. Let me show you exactly how they build this kind of soil. This is the cornerstone of the entire Amish approach, and it is where I see the biggest gap between what most home gardeners do and what the Amish do. Most of us compost a little. We have a bin in the corner of the yard, we toss in kitchen scraps and some leaves, and once or twice a year, we spread a thin layer on our beds. And that is better than nothing. But the Amish compost on a completely different scale. They are not adding a light dusting of compost as a supplement. They are building their soil with it, 3 to 4 inches of well-aged compost spread across every bed every single year. That volume is what makes the difference. Here is why. The microorganisms in your soil need organic matter as fuel. Bacteria and fungi consume that material, break it down, and release the nutrients in forms plant roots can absorb. The more fuel you provide, the larger and more active your microbial population becomes. And a larger microbial population cycles nutrients faster, which means your plants get fed more efficiently. It is a compounding cycle. More compost feeds more microbes, which build more soil, which supports even more microbes the following year. Here is exactly what to do. In the fall, after your last harvest, spread 3 to 4 inches of finished compost across all of your garden beds. Do not dig it in. Just lay it on the surface and let it sit through. The winter. The earthworms and soil organisms will begin pulling it down and incorporating it naturally. In early spring, about 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date, add another 1 to 2 inches of fresh compost on top as a surface dressing before you plant. If you're making your own compost, aim for a mix of roughly 3 parts brown material like dried leaves, straw, and cardboard to 1 part green material like kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and garden waste. Turn it every few weeks and give it about 3 to 4 months to fully break down. If you are buying compost, look for dark, crumbly material that smells earthy and clean, never sour or like ammonia. I want to be straight with you. If you have been adding just a thin sprinkle of compost once a year, doubling or tripling that volume is the single most impactful change you can make. I noticed a visible difference in my plant vigor within the first season of going heavier with compost, and by the second year, the improvement was dramatic. Now, there is a reason Amish soil is in a class of its own, and it is something most suburban gardeners do not have easy access to but can absolutely work around: aged livestock manure. The Amish have horses, cows, and chickens, which means they have a steady, year-round supply of manure that they compost and age before adding to their garden beds. This is not a luxury for them. It is the backbone of their soil fertility system. Aged manure is one of the richest sources of organic matter and microbial life you can add to a garden. It is packed with the bacteria and fungi that kickstart nutrient cycling, and it adds a concentration of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that compost alone cannot match. The key word is aged. Fresh manure is too hot. It will burn plant roots, introduce weed seeds, and can carry pathogens. Properly aged manure has been composted for at least 6 months to a year, until it is dark, crumbly, and smells like rich earth, not like a barn. Here's how the Amish apply it. In the fall, after the garden is put to bed, they spread 2 to 3 inches of aged manure across their beds on top of whatever mulch or crop residue is already there. Over the winter, it continues to break down and integrate into the soil. By spring, it has become part of the living soil matrix, feeding the microbial community and providing slow-release nutrients all season long. If you do not have livestock, you can buy bagged composted cow manure or composted chicken manure from any garden center. It is not quite the same as the fresh-from-the-farm product the Amish use, but it absolutely works. Apply it the same way, 2 to 3 inches in the fall, and let it do its work over winter. You can also check with local farms, horse stables, or community gardens. Many of them will give away aged manure for free if you're willing to haul it. One important note: always make sure manure is fully aged before applying it to beds where you will grow root vegetables or leafy greens. For food safety, aged manure should be applied at least 90 days before harvesting crops that contact the soil, or 120 days for root crops. The Amish follow this naturally because they apply in fall and plant in spring, giving it a full winter to cure. If the idea of building soil that feeds itself is starting to make sense, take a second to subscribe. I have been exploring these traditional methods for a while now, and there is a lot more coming. Let us keep going. This next step is one that the Amish practice year-round, and most of us only think about occasionally, if at all. Deep, consistent mulching. In an Amish garden, you will almost never see bare soil. Every bed, every pathway, every inch of ground is covered with some form of organic mulch. Straw, shredded leaves, old hay, wood chips on the pathways. It looks simple, almost too simple. But what is happening underneath that mulch layer is where the real magic of soil biology takes place. Here is what a 4 to 6 inch layer of organic mulch does for your soil. First, it holds moisture. In the heat of summer, bare soil can lose up to 30% more water to evaporation than mulched soil. That means less watering for you and more consistent moisture for the microbial community living beneath the surface. Second, it regulates temperature. Soil organisms are most active between 55 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Mulch keeps the soil in that sweet spot longer, which means your microbes are breaking down organic matter and cycling nutrients for more of the season. Third, and this is the part most people miss, that mulch layer is constantly decomposing from the bottom up. The material touching the soil is being consumed by bacteria, fungi, and earthworms, turning into fresh organic matter that feeds the soil food web. Your mulch is not just protecting the soil, it is slowly becoming soil. Here is how to do it. Maintain a 4 to 6 inch layer of organic mulch across all of your garden beds from spring through winter. Straw and shredded leaves are the easiest and most affordable options. Apply mulch around your plants after they are established, keeping it about 2 inches away from the base of stems to prevent rot. As the bottom layer decomposes through the season, add more on top to maintain that 4 to 6 inch depth. In the fall, you can pile it even heavier, up to 8 inches, to protect soil biology through the winter. By spring, that thick fall layer will have compressed and partially decomposed into a rich mat that earthworms have been feeding on all winter. I resisted heavy mulching for years because I thought it would attract slugs and create problems. In practice, the benefits have so dramatically outweighed any minor issues that I cannot imagine gardening without it now. My soil stays moist during dry spells, my weed pressure dropped by at least 70%, and the earthworm population in my beds has exploded. Now, here is the step that ties everything together and explains why Amish soil performs at the level it does. Everything we have covered so far, the compost, the aged manure, the mulch, it all serves one purpose: feeding and protecting an underground network of mycorrhizal fungi that most gardeners do not even know exists. These are microscopic fungal threads that attach to plant roots and extend out into the soil like a secondary root system. They can reach water and nutrients that roots alone cannot access, and they deliver those resources directly to the plant in exchange for sugars. In biologically active soil, a single plant can be connected to a fungal network that extends several feet in every direction. That is why plants in Amish soil establish faster and grow more vigorously. They are not just feeding from their own roots, they are plugged into an entire underground web of nutrient delivery. Here is what protects this network. Everything you are already doing. The compost and mulch feed the fungi. The no-dig approach, or at minimum, reduced disturbance, keeps their threads intact. The aged manure inoculates the soil with fresh microbial life. And here is what destroys it. Heavy tilling shreds fungal networks in minutes. Synthetic fertilizers, particularly high nitrogen formulas, can suppress fungal growth because they make plants less dependent on the mycorrhizal relationship. And bare, dry soil creates conditions where fungi cannot survive. If you are already composting, mulching, and avoiding heavy tillage, you are building this network whether you realize it or not. To give it an extra boost, avoid walking on your garden beds, which compacts the soil and crushes fungal threads. Keep beds narrow enough to reach the center from either side, about 3 to 4 feet wide. And when you transplant seedlings, disturb the soil as little as possible. Dig only the hole you need and nothing more. Let me share some patterns I noticed in my own gardening and how the Amish approach handles soil building differently. I did all of these for years, so there is no judgment here. The first pattern is relying on synthetic fertilizer as the primary food source. Most of us reach for a bag of granular fertilizer because it is fast and easy. The Amish approach builds a microbial community that delivers nutrients continuously and more efficiently. Synthetic fertilizer is a meal. Living soil is a self-replenishing kitchen. The second pattern is light, inconsistent composting. Adding a thin half-inch layer of compost once a year is not enough to shift your soil biology. The Amish go heavy, 3 to 4 inches, and they do it every single year without exception. Volume and consistency are what trigger the compounding effect. The third pattern is treating mulch as optional decoration. Most gardeners mulch for looks or basic weed control. The Amish treat mulch as a critical feeding system for soil organisms. When you understand that your mulch is slowly becoming soil, you stop thinking of it as a chore and start treating it as an investment. The fourth pattern is tilling compost and amendments into the soil. It feels productive, but it disrupts the fungal networks and soil structure that make nutrients available to plants. The Amish feed from the top and let the biology move it down naturally. Now here is something I started doing about 2 years ago after watching an Amish grower in Holmes County, and it has become one of my favorite tools for giving soil biology a fast boost. compost tea. The idea is simple. You take a small amount of high-quality finished compost and brew it in water with a little bit of aeration to multiply the beneficial microorganisms, then apply that liquid directly to your soil and plant leaves. It is essentially a concentrated microbial inoculant made from your own compost. Here is how to make it. Fill a 5-gallon bucket with non-chlorinated water. If your tap water is chlorinated, fill the bucket and let it sit uncovered for 24 hours to let the chlorine dissipate. Add roughly 4 to 5 cups of finished compost to a burlap sack or old pillowcase and suspend it in the water like a giant tea bag. Drop in a small aquarium air pump with a bubbler stone to keep the water oxygenated. This is important because you want to grow aerobic bacteria, the beneficial kind, not anaerobic organisms. Let it brew for 24 to 36 hours, then remove the compost bag and apply the liquid directly to your soil with a watering can or dilute it further and use it as a foliar spray on plant leaves. The Amish grower I learned this from applies compost tea to his beds 3 times during the growing season, once in early spring as the soil warms, once in early summer, and once in late summer. He told me it is like giving the soil a cup of coffee. It wakes up the microbial community and gets things moving faster, especially early in the season when the soil's still cool and biology is sluggish. I have been doing it every season since, and I consistently notice faster plant establishment and more vigorous early growth compared to beds that only get solid compost. Now, I want to be straight with you. Compost tea is a supplement, not a replacement. It works because you are already building living soil with heavy compost manure and mulch. Without that foundation, the tea does not have much to work with. But when you combine it with everything else we have covered today, it becomes the accelerant that helps your soil biology hit full speed sooner in the season. That is what I have learned from the Amish about building soil that makes everything grow faster. Heavy, consistent composting, aged manure as a microbial powerhouse, deep, year-round mulching, protecting the fungal networks underground, and a simple compost tea to jumpstart the biology when you need it. None of this is complicated, but all of it requires patience and consistency, which is exactly what Gelassenheit is about. You are not chasing a quick fix. You are building something that gets better every single year. If this changed how you think about what is happening beneath your plants, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into traditional growing methods. Thanks for spending time with me today, and I will see you in the next one.